For an amazing woman who has travelled all over the globe as an incredible travel writer, who would have thought that her biggest adventure of all would be right here at home, building a tiny house. Hi Louise, it's so nice to meet you.
Hi Bryce, thank you so much for coming. It's great to see you.
It is an absolute pleasure to be here, and oh my gosh, what an absolutely beautiful home you've built.
Oh, thank you.
Tell me about your journey into tiny home living. What was it that inspired you to do this?
I always knew that I wouldn't really fit into the traditional housing model because I was a freelance writer, a travel writer, and I was really living, hand to mouth for a long time. And I was happy with renting my whole life. And then a few things happened that kind of changed my attitude and approach to housing. The first one was that I'm from Sydney, and I was living in a rental house for 10 years with an assortment of flatmates, and that was great. But then the house was sold. And then I was in my late 40s and I decided I wanted to live on my own, and I couldn't find anywhere that I could afford. So I sold as many of my belongings as I could, and I went on the road. And I was actually traveling for about 18 months with no fixed address in Asia and Europe. And then at the end of that, I ended up having 2 weeks in a cabin in Norway. And I could only afford 2 weeks, but I thought, this is it. I'd always wanted to stay in a cabin in the woods and alone, to see if I could just be alone for that long. And it was just this beautiful, peaceful experience. And at the end of that, I just thought, I just want to live like this. Soon after that, I came back to Australia, and I knew I couldn't keep living in Sydney because it was just too expensive. And I wanted to keep writing, obviously. So I did a surf trip up the coast and ended up here in northern New South Wales. All those things, I think the cabin, and then turning 50, and just, I wanted to put down roots somewhere and have a home base. So then tiny houses came on my radar on wheels, and I thought, oh, this could work. I did a tiny house building workshop, and then COVID hit, and that became my window of opportunity because I couldn't travel. I was eligible for a wage subsidy from the government because the borders were closed. And my partner at the time, Max, suggested that we build a tiny house on his land. And I was like, oh, that's scary because I've never built anything in my life. And also the other scary thing was that he and I were in a bit of a rocky place, but this became the biggest adventure of my life. And so I said yes, and then we started designing the tiny, and I bought the trailer, and it was on.
What an amazing journey that is. And you've obviously also had this incredible career as a travel writer. That is a dream job for a lot of people. What was the reality of that like for you?
It was wonderful on so many levels. I mean, I got to see some amazing places, and it gives you like a backstage pass to interview people and to see things that often other people don't get to see when they travel. But it's a hard way to make a living, and it can be lonely sometimes. I think by the time I reached 50, I wanted to try and find the balance between traveling to earn a living and staying home to make a life.
Yeah. I really love that sentiment, and it's something that I can really understand as well, because obviously Russa and I, we travel all the time for our work, and it gets harder and harder to be away from home, especially once you've established a place that becomes your home. Actually being away and not getting to tend to your veggie gardens and not getting to watch your plants grow and things like that, it actually gets quite difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's incredible, actually, the sense of security I have now from owning my own home.
And you built this yourself with no prior experience. What was that like?
That was intense, and I think the learning curve was vertical. It was basically learning new things every day. Just even the build sequence, like knowing which, the order of things so that you can order materials. Often it would surprise you, like you'd think, oh, the kitchen's way off being decided. But in the first week that we were on the build, I had to decide on the extent of the kitchen cabinets because we were putting the floor down and we only had a limited supply of secondhand hardwood flooring. It's those kind of things that, it's like the wabi-sabi concept. It's not perfect. And I kind of like that. It just shows that we did build it ourselves. It was intense, but I really loved it. I just loved being able to see something that I'd drawn become a real thing. And I love the physicality of building. After, I'm usually sitting at a desk when I'm not traveling, and I loved being able to be in my body all day, and it was exhausting, but it was really good.
Yeah. And even though you did this build together with Max, right from the beginning, this was always intended to be your home, wasn't it?
Yep. He already owned a house, and he has an open door policy in his house. Lots of people coming and going, and I'm quieter and I write for a living, and my home is really my sanctuary where I go to retreat from the world and have some quiet time. So the tiny was always going to be mine, yeah. But he's a really talented woodworker and had done building with friends. He's not a builder per se, but yeah, I think he was really excited about doing the project as well.
And I have lots of questions about the house, but first we have to talk about this parking spot. What a dream place you've found here.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? I just love being in the house and seeing green from every window. It's really beautiful. I love living here. It really
is. Just listening to all of this bird song and everything here, you've got the most lovely gardens too. And yeah, it's all so close to town. What a great spot.
Yeah.
How did you find this parking spot?
I created a flyer and put that in letterboxes around, and I just kind of tried to spread the word. I talked to the local postie, the postman, and because, he knows everybody. And
what a great idea.
It's a great idea. Yeah, hot tip. And one of the great things about living in this town is that it's surrounded by lots of big semi-rural blocks of land. So I kind of drove to all the edges of the town and put flyers in letterboxes where I thought maybe they might want to have a tiny house on their land. And my landlords, where I'm currently living, they replied, and we talked for about 2 hours. We just really connected, and it was lovely. And yeah, it took a bit of organising to get the tiny house here. I did have to put a gravel pad down on the grass, and I'm only semi-off-grid, so I had to connect power and water to the house.
Right.
So I had to get a ditch dug. It cost, a bit more than $6,000 to do all the setup. But yeah, that's the reality, I think, when you don't have solar and rainwater tanks.
Absolutely. And the house, this is just such a great style. Tell me about the design.
I guess I always kept coming back to the cabin. So I had these two principles, in mind. I wanted it to be my forever home, but I also was inspired by the cabin in Norway, so I wanted it to be simple as well. And I wanted that cabin feel, so I did definitely want some wood cladding, and I chose Western red cedar, which is because it's very lightweight.
Yeah, beautiful as well.
It's really beautiful. Yeah, a bit of maintenance, which I'm finding, but but it is beautiful. And I also, wanted plenty of windows because I'd lived in far too many gloomy south-facing homes. So I kind of went a bit overboard on the windows. I've got 13 and a glass door. One of the joys of living in a small space is that you spend more time outside.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to have decks. Also, I'm planning to have a larger deck when I do have a piece of land that's mine. Yeah, but it's amazing now to have so much grass around me that I can spread a rug on the grass and put my hammock up between the trees and be outside really most of the time if it's fine weather.
Yeah. You've got the outdoor shower here as well?
Yes, the outdoor shower is one of my favourite features of the whole tiny house, and I actually have an indoor shower as well, but I never use it.
Fair enough.
And I've tried to orient the house wherever it is so that it's private.
Yeah.
I haven't got a screen around it or anything, and it's so lovely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what size is the tiny house?
It's 7.2 long and 2.5 wide and almost 4.3 metres high.
Great size. Well, the outside of this tiny house just looks so good. You've had such an adventure getting here, and I cannot wait to see what you've done on the inside. Can we check it out?
Yes, please, come on in.
All right. This is absolutely gorgeous. What a lovely, open and spacious feeling design this is.
Oh, thank you so much, Bryce. That's really what I was hoping for. It does feel like a TARDIS sometimes, doesn't it? Almost everyone who walks in who's never been in a tiny house before is really surprised at how roomy it feels, and that's because of the height. When we were first designing it, we had this day loft coming over the front door, so you walked in under it. And then it was watching one of your videos, actually, where someone had done a bump out. And I think we were halfway through the framing, and then we thought we could actually do that. And when you're doing timber frames, you can change things as you go. So we did the bump out because then we could have a full-size door, and when you came in, you got this really the sense of space as soon as you walked in.
It makes a big difference.
It does, yeah. And it also shades this window, which is where I work.
Yeah. Well, it is lovely having the desk right here because obviously this workstation is such an important part of your life.
Yeah, I really needed to have a dedicated workspace. I didn't want to have one that I had to pack up every night to have dinner. And I did kind of future-proof it where if I stop writing for any reason or I feel like I can write on my main bench, I can convert that into an L-shaped couch down the track.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Probably not very likely that you're going to stop writing.
Probably
though,
not
is it?
likely, no.
One of the things that really stands out to me about your design here is that everything is done so simply, but it all really works. And it is a very fully featured house. I mean, you have absolutely everything you need in here.
I think so. I mean, it's everything I need.
Yeah.
I mean, other people, I don't have aircon, I don't have dishwasher, I don't have a washing machine actually either. I use a laundromat in town. And part of that was to keep things simple so that I didn't have a lot of grey water to deal with.
Right.
So I actually just collect my grey water under the kitchen sink outfall, which is from the bathroom and the kitchen. And that goes to water the plants, to water the garden. I was always coming back to simplicity, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicely done. I like that blend between functionality and simplicity because I think it's pretty easy to overcook a tiny house. And I love the way that you have considered simplicity so well in this home.
I think it's been a bit of a guiding light in my life in general, and I think travel probably does that to you as well because you often can only take what you need.
That's a really interesting point that you made because you didn't really have a downsizing journey coming into this tiny house. You were already used to just living out of a suitcase.
Yeah, that's right. I did still have a lot of stuff. It's amazing how much you accumulate when you just stay in one place. And even now, things still accumulate.
It's easy for that to happen, isn't
Yeah.
it? Even on most of our trips, our suitcases come back a little bit heavier than when we left.
Yeah.
So I
But
understand that.
I think that was another design decision that I made, that I didn't want to have storage everywhere because I know that if you have storage, you'll fill it. And so I figure that with less storage, I will have less stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's a full-time job just looking after what I have. So I don't think I could have any more.
Yeah, fair enough. I like the design of the lounge loft up here too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's my little quiet space. I guess that and the bed loft are little cul-de-sacs where when you go there, you're not on your way to anywhere. So I read and meditate and sew sometimes up there as well as watching movies. And yeah, as soon as I go up there, I just feel calmer and it's one of my favorite little nooks. This ladder comes out so it can be a whole couch where I can sleep if I'm injured and I can't get up to my day loft. Yeah, so I've got lots of little nooks where I can read and sit with a cup of tea. And sometimes I'll follow the sun around like a cat in winter, just moving from one nook to the other where the sun goes.
Yeah, lovely. I like that. And what a kitchen. This bench is huge.
Yeah, this is a 3.8 metre salvage slab of white gum.
Beautiful.
It is beautiful. I'd always wanted a wooden kitchen table / dining table. I'd never really had a dining table in any of the rental places I'd lived. So this is my combined kitchen bench and dining table, really. And yeah, one of the things I love about it is what Max did with the cracks, and all timber will have imperfections, and he created these beautiful little butterfly joints to stop the cracks in it from splitting any further.
Yeah.
And they're very rustic, and yeah, I just love them. Yeah, I really love having wood. But I did also decide not to have a timber bench around my sink because I've seen from rental properties I've been in how the water damage can really deteriorate the wood over time.
Yeah.
So I chose the laminate for the sink area.
Fair enough too.
Yeah.
It does look like you have a good amount of storage in this kitchen.
Yeah, it's just a standard kitchen, so put together all the drawers and cupboards. And I did actually not itemize, but I did look at all the stuff I had, appliances and baking stuff. I really like baking, and just figured out how many drawers I would need and cupboards. And I actually have more space than I need. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah, brilliant. I like the open shelving down the end there too.
I really like being able to see the things I have, especially when I'm cooking, reminding me what I have and also what I need to get when I go to the market. And I do have a little pantry under the bench as well. And I like the look of it.
You've got underfloor storage here as well?
Yes, 2 underfloor storage boxes where I keep my hiking and camping gear in one, and then just some I don't know, winter clothes when it's in summer and the other one, and just paperwork and things like that. So yeah, they're the boxes that I'm often decluttering because things can just get chucked in there. And I have storage under the couch and under the stairs, of course.
Yeah, lots of storage under the stairs. Nice to see. Now, one of the things I notice is, especially for a writer and author, you have managed to pare down your books really well in this tiny house.
Yes, I did do a bit of a ruthless cull before I moved into the tiny, and just decided I've got my favourite books in one area, I've got kind of practical books in another area. Yeah, and I've just found that I'm using the library a lot more. There's also a street library up the road which I use, and I borrow books, so I just don't find the need to keep books as much. And if I do really want to keep one of the ones that is here probably has to go.
What are some of your favourites? What ones survived the cull?
Yeah, so I have 2 books by Robin Davidson, which is unusual. I think she's the only author I have more than one book of. I love The Overstory by Richard Powers. I read a lot of non-fiction, so some of them are ones that I know I'll pick up again, kind of almost as reference books, I guess.
Yeah. You know, something that's quite unusual that I notice about this design is I don't see any lights in the ceiling.
Yeah, I decided to have just wall-mounted lights and no downlights. But I wanted the ceiling to be clear. I don't have a fan. Yeah, I just want it to be an open, uninterrupted space, I guess. When I was getting all the lights, I thought, this is a bit excessive for like a 7.2 metre long house. But it's really good. And I think the other thing is it creates different spaces, the same thing as the nooks. You know, you don't feel like you're living in a single room, and lighting can really help you to feel like you're in a different area where it's softer or it's more task-oriented lighting. So yeah, at each step of the build and the design process, I felt like I was learning so much about just how to live and how to make a space comfortable and enjoyable to be in, I guess.
Yeah, very nicely done. Again, you've got a nice, simple and quite open design for the sleeping loft here.
Yeah, I decided, I think living in a subtropical climate, I really didn't want a boxed in bedroom. So that was to maximise airflow, and I used the plants in the planter box up there as a bit of a screen so that if you're in the day loft you can't see the bedroom. And also I didn't really want to be able to see the television from the bed loft. It's kind of a device-free zone in my little house. I try not to have my phone up there and things. So yeah, and the plants work really well, and they love being in the tiny house. I've never had so many plants inside. I mean, it's no thanks to me. It's just that they're in the right place finally.
Well, it's part of the beautiful thing of this region is that everything just wants to grow here, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally.
What about storage for clothing and stuff like that?
I keep all my clothing under the stairs.
Right.
But the planter box in the bed loft actually has on the other side of it some space for bed linen. It's a small space, but again, I really only want to have maybe 1 or 2 doona covers and fitted sheets. Like, I don't want to have a lot of things.
Yeah. So much of the life that you've designed for yourself here revolves around simplicity. What is it that really attracts you to simplicity and the idea of simple living?
I think it's just that the non-essentials get stripped away and what you're left with is what's really meaningful to you.
Yeah, I like that. And down the end there we have your bathroom. Can we have a look in there?
Yep, let's go.
Alrighty. This is really nice. You were not joking about not using the shower, were you? I can see it's more used for storage in there.
That's right. For the moment, it's almost like a little nursery for some of the plants because it gets a bit less light than some other areas in the house.
And a bit of extra space for some books.
Yeah, there are a few extra books in there as well. So yeah, maybe I wasn't so ruthless with my cull after all.
Well, it's a lovely space for the plants at least. And a really nice design in general for the bathroom. I love the hints of green in there, and the position of that louvre window is really good as well.
Yeah, that was a deliberate design choice as well. I really wanted to have that view. You know, you spend a lot of time in the tiny house walking up and down the length of it, and I wanted to be able to see greenery outside instead of looking at the bathroom vanity or a mirror. It was always meant to be very simple and small. Got a very simple composting toilet, works beautifully, and I mean, I don't spend a lot of time in here, but I want it to be a nice space when I go in there. And this is the only space also where I've decided to have vinyl flooring for waterproofness. Got a professional to actually come and do all the coving on the edges. Yeah, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, simple, but it works. A very cute little basin in the corner there.
Actually tossed up whether I would even have a basin in the bathroom because I know a lot of tiny house people just use the kitchen sink, but it seemed kind of nice to have one.
I like to separate those things.
Yeah, and it completes the bathroom in a way. And then it's funny because there's a lot of little things that you don't really have to think of when you're building a regular house, like where is your dirty laundry going to go? So I made a space at the bottom of the bathroom shelving for that.
Yeah, great. And so how long have you been living here now?
I've been living here a little over 4 years.
Great.
Yeah, so I moved in just a few months before we finished, which I would recommend in some ways because it does help you see how you use the space, but not in other ways because it is total chaos and you're living basically in a building site.
Right.
And then I've just been in this new site for about a year. Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think originally when I moved in, it was all about the tiny house and like, oh, wow, I love this little spot and I love these features. And now it just feels so normal to me to live in a tiny house. It's so comfortable. And I think when you design a space for you and for your body, your life, even on the stairs, I made sure that when I was standing on the top step, I could clear the ceiling. So that was just for me. And those little things make the tiny just so easy to live in. I can't really imagine living any other way now.
Yeah. I think especially for somebody like you who designed the home themselves, built it for themselves, so much of yourself has very intentionally been built into this tiny home. And so it makes sense that it works so well for you.
Yeah. Tiny house living, it's made me realize that home is really important to me. And I guess it's made me realize that I'm more capable than I thought I was in terms of managing the build and all that happened on the site, and also in terms of living in the tiny and maintaining my own home. I can fix things and I can make things now, and I feel like it's still changing me in a way. I mean, I've lived here for 4 years, but it's like the tiny and I are becoming more, it's like we're like an old couple. It's a real kind of symbiotic relationship when you live in a tiny. Yeah, I love the simplicity of those things, like even just sitting at my bench and looking out at the trees with a cup of tea. I think it's slowed me down a lot in a good way and made me appreciate a lot of the simple things that I have all around me without having to go halfway across the world to realise that.
Can we talk about the cost that was involved in building your home?
Yeah, I think because Max and I were working full-time on it for 8 months, and we had his friend, the builder, helping, and then that was, so we had to pay him and a couple of tradies, a plumber and electrician. It all cost about 80,000. And that was also during COVID. So now building materials have gone up astronomically. It would be a lot more expensive to build it now.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of secondhand materials as well. It's funny how when you're building a house, it connects you to people and people want to help. I mean, even the teacher of that tiny house building workshop would always say, you never build a tiny house on your own.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You had this very adventurous life as a travel writer, and you've slowed down a lot now in terms of grounding yourself into this home, living a lot more simply. What has the reality of that transition been like for you?
I think it's felt like a pretty natural transition, actually. I was surprised how homely I've become. Even my mum used to make all my clothes, and I was never into sewing. I was a bad student when she was trying to teach me how to use the sewing machine. But after the tiny house build, I got a secondhand sewing machine and started making cushion covers and curtain ties and even this, and just I vowed actually that I would not wear this shirt in the tiny house because it matches a few of the things around.
I love
it just
that.
Looks a bit
No, that's great.
It's like Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music making all the children's clothes out of that curtain. I think, the build was so intense, and then once that quietened down and I could just do these things in my own time, I just realized that I really love making things. I'm really enjoying how grounded that makes me feel, because when I'm writing, I'm in my head all the time, and I enjoy that as well. But I think when I was traveling, I had the travel part to get me out of my head and into the real world. And now that I'm not traveling as much, the tiny house kind of does that job. And then after the build, I started writing the book pretty much straight away. And that was also obviously focused on the build and the home life and what it means to have a home. And so I really turned away from travel for a while, and I'm getting back into it a little bit now, but it's not going to be as big a part of my life as it was before, I don't think.
Yeah. And so you have actually written a book about building this tiny home and your experiences of living in the home.
Yeah, I think the first thing to say about that is that it's not a how-to guide. It's very personal. So it's a memoir. I really needed to write it at the end of the build because while that tiny house was coming together, was that my relationship with Max was falling apart. So it was a really intense time on every level, like practical, like physical, mental, emotional, psychological, and I really needed to write everything down. This is how I process things, and even if I hadn't got it published, I think I still would have written it.
Yeah.
And then Writing is a way to connect, I think, as well. And that was as much a labour of love as building the tiny house. And I spent 2.5 years on the book, whereas only 8 months on the build.
Beautiful. Well, Louise, I just think this is such a magical home that you've built for yourself. I can really see how much love and effort that you have poured into building a space that fits you absolutely perfectly. Thank you so much for sharing your lovely home with me.
Thank you so much, Bryce, for coming to see it and talk about it. And yeah, it's really lovely to have you here.
My pleasure to be here. As somebody who has traveled all over the world, you can tell that Louise is a person who has a tremendous amount of life experience, and through that she's come to understand herself exceptionally well. Building this home, it's evident that she knew exactly what she wanted out of this place. Louise came into this project searching for security and simplicity, and here in this tiny home, that is exactly what she's found.